Chosen one. Listen and do not scroll past this moment. You've spent your life trying to understand why you never quite fit in, why rooms full of people still felt empty, why you gave your all and still ended up alone, why your name was left off the list, your value overlooked, your loyalty repaid with betrayal. Let me speak what your spirit has always known, but your heart couldn't say aloud. You were never created to fit in. You were created to stand out because you were chosen. This world rejected you, not because you were weak, but because you were too strong in the spirit to be manipulated. You didn't follow their script. You didn't bow to their idols. You didn't water down your light to make others comfortable in their darkness. And for that, they pushed you aside, laughed, whispered, walked away. But while they were turning their backs, God was setting you apart. What they called rejection, heaven called selection. What they saw as a flaw, God marked as favor. You weren't denied. You were redirected. You weren't forgotten. You were being forged. Every door that closed, every person that walked out, every delay you couldn't understand, it was all orchestrated by a divine hand that refuses to let your destiny fall into the wrong hands. You see, some people are celebrated too soon. Others are celebrated by the wrong crowd. But you were never meant for temporary applause. You are being raised for eternal impact. And that requires a deeper breaking, a longer préparation, a more sacred process. That's why it's felt so heavy. That's why the path has been so lonely. God doesn't crown counterfeit versions of his children. And what he's about to do through you can't be built on wounds that haven't been healed or identities that haven't been restored. So he allowed the world to reject you, so you would finally run to the only one who would never leave you. The prophet Isaiah recorded these words in chapter 66, verse 2. These are the ones I look on with favor, those who are humble and contrite in spirit, and who tremble at my word. That's you, the humble one, the one who kept praying even when no one saw, the one who forgave when it cost everything, the one who chose truth over popularity, even when it meant walking alone. You are exactly who God looks upon with favor, and no amount of rejection from people can cancel what heaven has planned for your life. You are a threat to the kingdom of darkness. That's why the warfare has been so intense. That's why certain doors slammed in your face without warning. That's why some people you thought were permanent suddenly vanished. It wasn't punishment. It was protection. The wrong people can't follow you into the next level. The oil you carry is too costly to be shared with the careless. You were not overlooked. You were hidden. Hidden for such a time as this. Hidden so no man could boast and say they made you. Hidden so the unveiling of your destiny would be unmistakably marked by God's hand alone. And now comes the shift. Something in your spirit has already been sensing it. The tide is turning. The silence is breaking. The weight you've carried is not in vain. You are being summoned forward, not by a trend, not by an algorithm, but by the living God who has chosen you from the beginning. The same God who watched you suffer in silence is about to reward you in public. Chosen one. Don't waste time trying to get back into places God pulled you out of. Don't beg for the approval of people who were never assigned to understand you. Don't shrink yourself to avoid rejection. You are not who they said you were. You are who God declares you to be. So lift your head, wipe your tears. Your rejection was your redirection. Your pain was your preparation. And your time? It's not coming, it's already begun. If you feel that something in this message was written straight to your soul, let heaven and earth witness your agreement. Comment the number 444 below as a prophetic act. That number represents divine selection, angelic covering, and spiritual order. You are not here by mistake. And before you go, pause. Like this message, share it with someone who needs to know they're not forgotten. And subscribe to stay connected, because this is only the beginning of what's being revealed to the chosen ones. The world rejected you, but God has chosen you, and that changes everything. Chosen one. The world forgot you. They moved on, didn't they? While you stood still, trying to figure out what you did wrong, trying to understand how someone so faithful could be so easily erased. You gave your all. You showed up. You stayed loyal when it would have been easier to walk away. But when it was their turn to see you really see you, they closed their eyes. Yet even in the silence, heaven knew your name. Man keeps score by appearances, by who's trending, who's visible, who's useful in the moment. But God keeps score by the unseen. He watches the heart. He watches the lonely prayers you whispered when no one was around. He saw you keep serving when your name wasn't listed. He watched you forgive again, and again, and again. And heaven never forgot. You weren't invisible. You were intentionally hidden. You see, there are seasons when God conceals the ones He's called, not to punish them, but to protect the oil. He doesn't rush the revealing of the chosen. He allows the silence, the forgetting, the long stretches of obscurity, not because He has abandoned you, but because what He's building inside you can't be tampered with by premature applause. You were never forgotten. You were preserved. The psalmist David declared in the book of Psalms, chapter 56, verse 8, "You have kept count of my tossings, put my tears in your bottle. Are they not in your book?" Yes, they are. Every tear you cried when no one texted back. Every time you showed up for others while you were breaking inside. Every time you honored God while wondering if He still saw you. Heaven was recording what earth ignored. You are sacred to God. While the world was scrolling past, He was watching over your destiny with jealous love. He's not indifferent to your pain. He is deeply invested in your process, and He will never waste the sorrow He allowed. This is why you couldn't find peace in shallow spaces. This is why the noise of the world never felt like home. This is why your soul longed for something more. Even when everything seemed fine on the outside. You weren't created for the crowd. You were set apart for the calling. And so, He allowed the forgetting. He allowed the silence of people so that you could hear the clarity of heaven. If their voices were still loud, you wouldn't be able to hear His. If they had celebrated you too soon, you would have stayed where you didn't belong. So He let them move on, and in their absence, He drew near because He knows your name, not your title, not your image, not your platform, your name, the name He gave you before you were formed in your mother's womb, the name He called out over your destiny long before the rejection ever came. That's the name He's about to raise up, not the version of you the world wanted, but the one He shaped in secret. So don't despise the forgetting, don't curse the silence, don't mourn the closed doors. What felt like loss was divine mercy, and what feels like delay is sacred timing. You are being positioned not for applause, but for authority. not for clout, but for impact. The kind of impact that breaks generational chains, the kind that sets captives free, the kind that doesn't come from being liked, it comes from being chosen. God has not forgotten the ones who feel forgotten. He has not passed over the ones passed over by man. There is a reversal coming, a divine revealing, and when it happens, it won't be because you demanded recognition. It will be because the weight you carry can no longer be hidden. Your name has always been known in heaven, and soon the world will know it too, not because you shouted it, but because God spoke it. And when God speaks your name, the atmosphere shifts. Doors swing open without keys. People who never noticed you suddenly can't ignore the grace that surrounds you. But this time, you won't enter those rooms with insecurity or the need to prove your worth. You'll walk in with the quiet confidence of someone who knows God sent me here. Not man, not chance, not coincidence. God. And when the world asks, "Where did you come from?" your answer will be simple. From the secret place, from the silence, from the presence of the one who never forgot me. Oh well, you were chosen all along. You didn't choose the fire, but the fire chose you. Not as punishment, but as preparation. Not to destroy, but to define. You were not forged in the applause of men, but in the quiet suffering of a soul set apart. Others were built through praise. You were built through pressure. While they were being promoted, you were being processed. But hear this truth. Fire doesn't come for the ordinary. Fire finds the chosen. And you, chosen one, have been through flames most couldn't survive. Not just life's common troubles, but crushing internal, personal, spiritual crushing. There were moments the weight was so heavy you didn't think you'd breathe again. Nights where your tears had no words. Seasons where even God's silence felt like a verdict. But somehow, you're still standing. That's not coincidence. That's evidence. The fire didn't consume you because it wasn't allowed to. It was only permitted to refine what had eternal value. Everything not rooted in God had to be burned away. Your pride? Gone. Your need for validation? Gone. Your dependency on people who were never assigned to your calling? Burned off. What remains now is not just survival. It is purity. It is power. It is purpose. The prophet Zechariah recorded these words in chapter 13. Verse 9, "I will put this third into the fire, and refine them as one refines silver, and test them as gold is tested. They will call upon my name, and I will answer them." That's your story, isn't it? You were the one in the third, the remnant, the set apart. Others got out early. You stayed. Others took shortcuts. You surrendered to the full process. And for that, heaven has honored you, even when earth didn't. The weight you carry now is different. You walk into rooms with more than a name, you carry an atmosphere. You're no longer looking for a seat at the table. You are the table. And still, you carry it humbly, because you remember what it cost. You haven't forgotten the fire, and maybe that's what separates you most from others. You remember. You remember what it felt like to be overlooked. You remember the sting of betrayal from people you thought were family. You remember the silence of God that forced you to grow up in the Spirit. And now, every step forward feels sacred. Every door that opens feels holy. Because nothing was handed to you, you were forged for it. Chosen one. This is why some people can't understand you. You carry too much weight for their shallow waters. You speak from places they've never walked through. You forgive with a depth they can't match. That's not arrogance, that's authority. You've been in the wilderness too long to come back sounding cute. You speak with fire because you were purified by it. And don't let anyone tell you that you're too intense. Intensity is what you get when someone has wrestled with angels and survived. Your passion is not a personality trait. It's residue from the refining. You're marked because of what you endured. The scars are proof you made it through battles that tried to claim your mind. Your body, your calling. So today, let heaven and hell witness this truth rising from your life. The fire didn't break you, it built you. Every flame that tried to consume you became a furnace of revelation. You discovered your real strength, not in the sunshine, but in the smoke. And now you walk with a quiet confidence that terrifies darkness. If this is your word, if your spirit is stirring, comment, "I'm fire tested." Just 3 words. But they carry your entire journey. I'm fire tested. Say it not just to identify, but to testify. To tell the powers of darkness, you tried, but I'm still here. To tell your future, I'm ready. I've been through too much to shrink back now. And to remind yourself, I didn't come this far to pretend to be average. Oh, type it not for attention but as agreement. Agreement with the fire. Agreement with the God who allowed it. Agreement with the version of you that's rising from the ashes. Because this next chapter won't be written in the ink of fear, it will be written in fire. They won't recognize you at first, because you're not who you were. The fire has changed your shape. You lost things in the flames, people. Expectations, illusions. But what you gained was far greater. Clarity, conviction, calling. These things cannot be bought. They must be birthed in fire. And now, you're stepping forward, not as a victim, not as a survivor, but as a vessel refined, ready, real. And there is nothing more dangerous to darkness than a chosen one who knows they've been through fire and lived to tell the story. You are not fragile. You are fire-tested. And fire-tested vessels don't crack under pressure, they carry glory. You thought it was over, didn't you? When everything around you went silent, when the people you trusted disappeared, when the momentum dried up and all you were left with was the echo of old prayers. That season didn't feel like a test, it felt like a funeral. Like everything you carried in your spirit had been buried. You stopped dreaming. You stopped speaking. You stopped expecting. Not because you stopped believing in God, but because you weren't sure He still believed in you. But you weren't buried. You were hidden. Hidden. Not because you were dead, but because you were seeded. God placed you in a place where no one could reach you, not to abandon you, but to prepare you. You were not cast aside. You were covered. Covered, so the work He was doing in you could grow strong without interruption. Covered, so that when you rise, it will be with roots too deep for storms to shake. The prophet Isaiah wrote in chapter 49, verse 2, "He made me into a polished arrow and concealed me in His quiver." No, that's you. A polished arrow, not yet launched, but sharpened in secret. The wait has not been wasted. The hidden season has not been in vain. It was never rejection, it was refinement. In the moment, you couldn't see it. You mistook silence for judgment. You mistook delay for denial. But God wasn't saying no. He was saying, not yet. You're not late, you're being aligned. And alignment takes time. You don't fire an arrow before it's fully aimed. You don't launch someone who isn't grounded. God has been fine-tuning your character, sharpening your focus, burning away everything that couldn't follow you into the next season. He let others be seen before you, not because they were better, but because what He's building in you takes longer. You're not being prepared for a moment of influence. You're being built for decades of impact. That's why it's taken time. That's why He hid you. You've seen people promoted who didn't honor God. You've watched people rise who cut corners, compromised, and manipulated, and it made you question your place. God, did you forget me? No. He didn't. He's too faithful for that. He's not just writing a testimony, He's raising a standard through you. Because there's something sacred about hiddenness, something holy about the wilderness. You learn to hear His voice in a different way when it's the only one speaking. You learn to trust His timing when nothing around you makes sense. You learn to stop performing and start surrendering. These are things no platform can teach. Only the secret place can. It was in the hidden place that your motives were purified, where your prayers shifted from bless me to break me if you must, but don't let me miss you. It was in the shadows that your roots dug deep, not into reputation, but into righteousness, not into performance, but into presence. This is the unseen foundation God requires before He reveals a vessel of glory. You were never disqualified. You were being qualified in silence. Others may have seen stillness, but heaven saw transformation. What looked like a pause was a holy preparation. You're not who you were before the silence. You're not broken, you're anchored. You're not stuck, you're stationed. And soon, when the unveiling comes, they won't be able to connect the old version of you to the one God reveals. That's how deep the work has been. So don't be ashamed of your hidden season. Don't resent the quiet years. They are your strength now. When others fall under pressure, you will stand. When others fade with fame, you will endure. Because you were not built in applause. You were built in surrender. And that's why you're rising differently. Not with noise, but with weight. Not with performance, but with power. Not with ego, but with oil. You carry something forged in fire and protected in secret. The world may not know your name yet, but heaven does. And when God reveals what He's been doing in you, no one will be able to take credit for it but Him. The world thought you were finished, but they didn't know you were hidden. And what's hidden by God will be revealed by Him in power, in timing, and in unstoppable authority. Let the silence finish its work. Let the soil continue to nourish the roots, because the rising will be undeniable. And when it happens, they'll realize you weren't buried, you were planted. They laughed, didn't they? When you said God called you, when you shared the vision He gave you, when you clung to promises that made no sense to the world, they mocked the delay. They questioned your sanity. They said, if it was really from God, why hasn't it happened yet? But what they didn't know is that heaven doesn't operate on human schedules. They saw silence. God saw strategy. Because while they laughed, you were being built. Quietly, painfully, privately. While they moved forward in the world's systems, you were being anchored in something eternal. While they ran ahead, God was slowing you down to deepen your roots. They didn't understand that the ones God uses the loudest are often the ones he hides the longest. You didn't miss it. You've been preserved. Heaven has always had perfect timing, and that time is now beginning to shift. God is whispering, now, not tomorrow, not someday, now. And when he says it, nothing, and no one, can stop it. Doors that refuse to open are about to swing wide. Those who mocked you will be forced to watch what they can no longer deny. You were chosen all along. You've been faithful in the fire. You've remained when it would have been easier to run. You stayed obedient when obedience cost you everything. That is what set you apart. God didn't need perfection from you. He needed perseverance, and you gave it. The psalmist David wrote in the book of Psalms, chapter 118, verse 22, "The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone." That rejected stone was you. Passed over, dismissed, counted out. But the master builder never chooses based on man's opinions. He selects based on what only he can see, and what he saw in you was a vessel that would endure the rejection without surrendering to bitterness. So when they said your time was over, God said, "Not yet." When they said your dream was dead, God whispered, "I'm just getting started." Now the same mouths that mocked will witness, and you won't even need to explain yourself. You won't need to clap back or defend your process. Your becoming will do all the talking. The glory of your story will silence every doubt, every accusation, every lie. And when they ask, "How did this happen?" you'll simply say, "God said now." And if this message is igniting something inside you, if your heart is burning with recognition, then respond. Like this message as a public agreement, not for vanity, but for victory. Let it mark the moment you said, "I believe this is my time." Share it with someone still waiting in the dark, someone who's been mocked for hoping, someone who needs this confirmation just as much as you did. Subscribe to stay aligned with the stream of prophetic words heaven is releasing. This isn't just content, it's direction for the chosen. Week by week, God is building something in you through these messages, layer by layer. And if the Holy Spirit stirs you to give, sow into this word, not from pressure, but from honor, from agreement, from alignment. You're not just giving into a message, you're giving into movement. Your support helps carry this word into places algorithms can't reach, into homes, hearts, and nations. Your donation becomes a seed of faith. And even the smallest seed has power when it's sown in good soil. What you help spread may be the very message that snatches someone out of despair and into purpose. Your support helps this message reach the ones still wandering in silence, still battling discouragement, still searching for a voice that speaks their language. You become a vessel in the chain of awakening. Even the smallest seed can unlock a harvest. If this word brought clarity, conviction, or comfort, don't let it end with you. Pass it forward. Multiply the reach of what God has begun, because the shift is real. The timing is divine. And you're right on time. Let them laugh. Let them mock. Let them scroll. None of it can stop what heaven has set in motion. You didn't miss it. You've been reserved for it. And now, when heaven says, now, not even hell can say, no. So don't shrink. Don't second guess. Don't let fear talk you out of what faith already confirmed. Step forward with boldness. knowing that no part of your process was wasted. The world may be surprised by your rising, but heaven has been waiting for it. This is your appointed moment. Walk in it. There's a reason this message found you today. Not because the algorithm brought it, but because heaven aligned it. You've been asking quietly, God, is it really my time? Is this really for me? And deep down, something in your spirit already knows the answer. Yes, this is your confirmation. You've waited. You've wept. You've warred silently while others celebrated loudly. But still, you stayed. Still, you believed. Still, you held on to the promise, even when everything in your life seemed to contradict it. That kind of faith doesn't go unnoticed by heaven. That kind of obedience doesn't fade into the background. God saw you. And now, He's answering, this is not coincidence. This is not a generic word. This is divine interruption. You're standing at a spiritual threshold. Not everyone will see it. Not everyone will feel it. But you do. Something is shifting. And not just around you, but within you. The ache you've carried is turning into hunger. The pain is turning into power. The silence is turning into strategy. And all of it is leading to a single truth. You were chosen for such a time as this. The world called it delay. God called it development. What took others months has taken you years, not because you were behind, but because your foundation had to be deeper. God didn't just want to use you, He wanted to trust you. And trust is forged in the fire of waiting, in the wilderness, in the not yets and not here and not them. Oh, but now the atmosphere is shifting. The spiritual weight has started to break. And it's not because you forced it. It's because you've endured enough to carry what others would have dropped. You've been qualified in private. You've passed tests no one else even knew you were taking. And heaven has placed a seal over you. There is a call that comes when heaven is ready to reveal what it has hidden. That call isn't loud, but it's clear. And if your heart is burning right now, if your spirit is trembling, it's because your name is being whispered through the courts of heaven. Not for destruction, but for deployment. You are being summoned not by man, not by popularity, not by applause, but by the God who chose you before time began. And when He speaks a word, it does not return void. What He declared over you is still in motion. The detours didn't cancel it. The heartbreak didn't ruin it. The delay didn't weaken it. It is still alive. And now it's about to be fulfilled. Even the prophets were hidden until the time appointed. Moses wandered the wilderness. Joseph sat in a prison. David returned to the field. But when heaven says, now, nothing on earth can hold you back. You are not late. You are right on time. The prophet Isaiah declared in chapter 60, verse 1, arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. Amen. This isn't just a poetic line, it's your personal instruction. You've been in the dark, but your light is now required. You've been silent, but your voice has been trained for this hour. God is not suggesting you rise, He's commanding it. The time for shrinking is over. The time for shining has come. But don't miss the moment, because some will hear this and scroll. Some will feel the pull and still stay stuck in fear. But for you, chosen one, this is different. You've already died to the things that held them back. You've already lost what you were afraid to lose. You've already walked away from comfort. So now, walk into calling. This is your release point. A divine unlocking, a shift so personal that only your spirit can interpret it. And if this word resonates, if it sounds like the conversation you've been having with God behind closed doors, comment the number 555 below. That number is prophetic. It symbolizes divine grace for transition, supernatural alignment, and fresh release. When you type it, don't do it as a gesture, do it as a declaration, as a way of saying, God, I see it, I hear you, I receive it, and let this number be your answer, not to me, not to the video, but to God. Let it be your yes. Let it be your agreement. Let it be your final step out of fear and into fire. Holy Ghost, fire. The kind that refines and commissions and anoints all at once. This is not where your story ends. This is where the real narrative begins. The one God has been writing behind the scenes. The one that doesn't start with applause but starts with obedience. You've said yes in the dark. Now God is about to say yes in the light. Comment 555 if this is your moment. Let heaven record it. Let hell feel it. Let the earth witness it. You are not forgotten. You are not lost. You are not behind. You are chosen, and now you are being released. The pain wasn't random. The heaviness you carried wasn't a result of weakness. It was a sign of divine weight. There are burdens given to ordinary people. And then there are crosses reserved for the called. You didn't go through what you went through just to survive. You endured it because you were being set apart. There's a holy marking that comes through pain. Not just the pain others can see, but the kind that no one noticed. The kind you carried silently, with a smile on your face and a storm in your soul. The kind that didn't come with explanations, only endurance. You've been misunderstood, not because you were wrong, but because your spirit didn't match the space you were in. People couldn't understand the war inside you because they didn't recognize the calling around you. They labeled you emotional, dramatic, unstable. They told you to get over it, to move on, to let it go. But what they didn't know was that what you were carrying wasn't personal, it was prophetic. You weren't just wrestling with life, you were wrestling with legacy. That's why the pressure was so intense. That's why you often felt like you were battling things too big for your season. You weren't just fighting for your present, you were fighting for the generations that will come through you. You've been contending for something bigger than you. You were never weak. You were chosen. And chosen ones carry weight spiritually, emotionally, even physically. You've carried the weight of disappointment without letting it destroy your hope. The weight of rejection without letting it harden your heart. The weight of responsibility without anyone to lean on. And still, you didn't drop it. That's not failure. That's favor. God trusted you with pain because He knew it wouldn't kill your praise. He knew the fire would refine you, not reduce you. He knew the attacks would only increase your authority. Every dark night was a chapter in your testimony. Every setback was secretly loaded with strategy. And every betrayal was part of your blessing. The Apostle Paul wrote in his second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 4, verses 8 through 9, "We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed." No, that wasn't just Paul's testimony, it's yours too. You've survived what others didn't see. You've endured what would have broken others. You've kept walking when your legs were trembling. And even when you had every reason to turn your back on God, you didn't. You stayed. You wept. You wrestled. But you stayed. And that staying power became the very thing that positioned you. The pain didn't come to destroy you. It came to identify you. That's why you couldn't escape it. That's why, no matter how much you tried to numb it, ignore it, or run from it, it always found you. Because it wasn't just pain, it was prophecy in disguise. God was allowing your breaking to birth something holy. And though you didn't understand it at the time, your spirit kept saying, "This isn't the end." Oh, and it wasn't. The enemy wasn't attacking you because of who you were. He was attacking you because of who you were becoming. He knew if you ever realized the truth, if you ever saw your reflection through heaven's eyes, you would stop playing small. You would stop apologizing for your anointing. You would stop shrinking to fit into places you've outgrown. You've been entrusted with sorrow that others couldn't carry. Not because God wanted to see you suffer, but because He knew your hands were steady enough to carry something sacred. You've walked through valleys that were never meant to break you. They were meant to reveal what was unbreakable in you. There's something about pain that purifies your perception. It strips away what's shallow and leaves behind what's solid. You stopped looking for approval the moment you realized obedience was more valuable. You stopped begging for validation when you learned that heaven already wrote your name into the story. And now that you're on the other side of it, maybe not fully healed, but standing, you can finally see what the pain produced. Strength, discernment, compassion, a kind of authority you never asked for, but now walk in without effort. You're no longer triggered, you're trained. No longer wounded, you're wise. The same pain that once paralyzed you has become the platform for your purpose. You don't need a title to prove your worth. Your scars say enough. You are not broken beyond repair. You are chosen beyond comprehension. And the pain that once tried to define you has only confirmed. You've been set apart by fire. You've questioned it more times than you can count. God, am I still qualified? After the delays, after the detours, after the decisions you regret but can't undo, you've looked at yourself through the lens of your flaws, your failures, your past, and you've wondered if maybe, just maybe, you missed your moment. If maybe God changed His mind. But hear this now. You are not disqualified, you are destined. There is nothing God didn't see coming. Not one wrong turn. Not one moment of weakness. Not one collapse under pressure. He knew you would stumble. And He called you anyway. He knew you'd doubt. And He still marked you. Destiny isn't given to the perfect. It's given to the willing. And the fact that you're still here, still seeking, still standing through it all, is evidence that you are still in the story. You don't need to rewind your life or undo what's been done. God doesn't operate like man. He doesn't throw people away when they mess up. His grace doesn't expire. His calling isn't fragile. What He placed inside of you is still there, buried, maybe dormant for a time, but never revoked. You've spent so long trying to earn your way back to worthiness, but you were never disqualified to begin with. You were wounded. Yes, you made choices out of pain, out of pressure, out of confusion. But wounds don't cancel callings. In fact, sometimes they confirm them, because nothing reveals the hand of God like a life that should have fallen apart but didn't. If perfection were the requirement, no one would be used by God. But He never asked for perfection. He asked for surrender. There is power in saying, "God, I still believe you can use me." That one decision, honest, humble, unpolished, is enough to shake hell and shift heaven. Because that's what grace is for. Not to excuse sin, but to restore identity. Not to erase consequences, but to realign destiny. You are not your past. You are not your lowest moment. You are not the mistake that still haunts you at night. You are who God called you to be before that mistake ever existed, and He hasn't changed His mind. The prophet Joel recorded in chapter 2, verse 25, "I will restore to you the years that the swarming locust has eaten." Not just the joy, not just the peace, the years, the time you thought was wasted, the seasons you thought were too far gone, the opportunities that slipped through your fingers. God doesn't just give you what you lost, He gives you what you missed while you were lost. He's not intimidated by your broken timeline. He's the redeemer of it. Yes, the pain was real. Yes, the consequences were heavy. But nothing is too broken for God to rebuild. Nothing is too far gone for Him to redeem. You're not standing in shame, you're standing on a second chance. And if you're still breathing, you're still called. Don't let guilt lie to you. Don't let fear convince you that you've forfeited your future. Don't let the opinions of people trap you in a moment God already forgave. You are not stuck, you are still being shaped. Every scar you carry is being rewoven into a story of grace. Every chapter that embarrassed you is being transformed into a testimony that will set others free. You don't have to hide anymore. You don't have to fake strength. You don't feel. You just have to come back. Come back to the God who never left. He doesn't need you to fix yourself first. He just needs you to stop running, to stop agreeing with the lie that says, "You're too far gone," because you're not. You've never been. This is the kind of grace that finds prodigals in pigsties, that restores Peters who denied Him, that raises Davids who fell, that rewrites futures for the very ones others gave up on. So breathe. The war is not over. The promise is not dead. And the call has not been cancelled. You are not disqualified. You are destined. And when you rise, because you will, it won't be as someone begging for a second chance. You'll rise as one who knows they were never truly disqualified, only detoured. You'll walk in rooms grace rebuilt for you. You'll speak with a fire that only failure could teach. And those who once whispered about your fall will witness your return, not to prove them wrong, but to prove God faithful. This isn't your ending. It's your re-entry. There's a moment in every chosen one's life when the noise goes quiet and only the voice of God remains. No friends, no crowd, no applause, just you and Him, and the question, will you still follow me? Even now? Not when you feel strong, not when the future is clear, but in this moment, when the path ahead is still blurry and your heart feels tired. You've come far, farther than most know, and the truth is, you've carried a weight most would have dropped by now. You've been loyal to a promise that hasn't fully unfolded. You've obeyed instructions that cost you opportunities, relationships, maybe even comfort. And while others sprinted ahead, chasing their own plans, you stayed tethered to the quiet voice that told you to wait. That kind of faith is rare, and heaven has never looked away from it. Even now, in the moments when you feel unseen, misunderstood, or forgotten, God sees everything. The tears you shed in private, the words you never said but buried deep, The silent sacrifices no one acknowledged. He's seen it all. And he's been writing a story no one can stop. The people around you may only see delay, but God see depth. The battles you've walked through were never about punishment, they were about preparation. He's been building you, not for a moment, but for something eternal. But now comes a deeper call, not louder, just deeper. One that doesn't ask for more activity but more surrender, because the next chapter isn't about striving, it's about aligning. It's about letting go of your timeline and trusting God's, letting go of your idea of what it should look like, and saying, Lord, not my will, but yours. That level of surrender isn't weak, it's powerful. It's what separates the crowds from the called. This isn't about achieving something great. It's about becoming someone holy. You've been walking through the fire, and maybe you haven't understood all of it. Maybe you've asked, God, why does it still hurt? But what you didn't realize is that every flame was burning away what couldn't follow you into your calling. He's not punishing you, he's purifying you. The pain has had purpose. The silence has had strategy. You are being prepared for places your name hasn't even been mentioned yet. You are being stretched for responsibilities your hands haven't touched yet. And it's not in vain. Not one step, not one tear, not one day of waiting. The prophet Nahum wrote in chapter 1, verse 7, The Lord is good, a refuge in times of trouble. He cares for those who trust in him. That isn't just comfort, it's covenant, a promise to the weary, a vow to the faithful. It's a reminder that your suffering has never gone unseen, that even in silence, even in struggle, even in shadow, God was still a refuge. You weren't walking alone, you were walking carried. And every ounce of trust you've held onto in the dark is precious to him. The enemy wanted you to think it was over, that the silence was rejection, that the closed doors were a sign to give up. But he miscalculated one thing. You didn't come this far by feelings, you came this far by faith. And faith isn't about being fearless. It's about moving anyway, trusting anyway, believing when your heart breaks, surrendering when your flesh wants control. So now, in this moment of clarity, let your spirit say what your mouth may have been too weary to say. Comment, I still trust. 3 words, but they carry the weight of your journey. Let that be your declaration in the spirit. Let it be a strike against every voice that told you to quit. Let it be a signal to heaven that even after all of it, you still trust the one who called you. You're not trusting blindly. You're trusting with bruises, with tears, with experience. And that kind of trust is rare. That kind of trust moves the heart of God. Let that be your response today, not with striving, but with stillness, not with performance, but with peace. Because even when you can't see the whole picture, you can still trust the hand holding the brush. You're not finished. You're being fortified. And this kind of foundation cannot be shaken. You are not losing your faith. You are learning how to walk with it. You are not behind. You are being built. You are not forgotten. You are deeply known. And God still has more. Comment, I still trust. Because surrender is your strength. And obedience is your victory. There's something powerful about being rejected by people but still chosen by God. You've lived it. You've breathed it. And maybe you didn't always have the words to describe it. But deep in your spirit, you've known, they didn't see me, but but God did. The rejection wasn't a detour. It was divine direction. They didn't leave you behind. They left you free. Free to follow what they would have tried to control. Free to become what they would have tried to limit. God didn't let you fit in because He was never planning for you to stay there. He wasn't raising you for their circle. He was preparing you for His kingdom. They saw your presence as a problem, not realizing that what they were rejecting was a mantle they weren't worthy to carry. You've had to walk away from places that felt familiar. You've had to say goodbye without closure. You've had to rebuild when nothing around you made sense. And yet, here you are, still standing, still chosen, still set apart. Why? Because your calling doesn't depend on man's acceptance. It rests solely on God's authority. The psalmist David declared in the book of Psalms, chapter 27, verse 10, "Though my father and mother forsake me, the Lord will receive me." That's not just a comfort for the rejected, it's a seal for the chosen. Even when those closest to you walked away, God didn't flinch. When the ones who should have covered you exposed you, God covered you instead. When the people you trusted couldn't handle your depth, God pulled you deeper into His own presence. Rejection became your release. You were not called to convince people of your worth. You were called to carry His presence. And sometimes, that presence is what made people uncomfortable. It wasn't you, it was what you carried. The light in you irritated what was still hiding in them. Your purity confronted compromise. Your hunger exposed their apathy. And because they couldn't change you, they rejected you. Let them walk. Let them question you. Let them scroll past. Let them laugh. Because the same ones who rejected you will be the ones watching when God sets the stage. Not to humiliate them, but to glorify Himself. You will become the evidence that rejection can't cancel purpose. You will stand as living proof that being overlooked by man only positioned you to be anointed by God. You've already seen it, how doors that were slammed in your face led you to divine connections. How the people who abandoned you made space for peace you didn't know you needed. How the delay birthed discernment. Every no shaped the yes God was preparing. That's why you're stronger now. Not louder, stronger. You don't need to announce your becoming. You just need to walk in it. But hear this, what God is about to do in your life will not be small. It will silence doubt. It will redeem the years. It will restore the voice you silenced to keep the peace. And when it happens, you won't respond with ego. You'll respond with awe. You'll know this isn't something you built, it's something He breathed. So don't apologize for rising. Don't apologize for being seen now. You paid a price for this oil. The nights you spent in silence. The prayers no one knew about. The battles you never spoke of. God saw it all, and this is His response. If this word has confirmed what your spirit has been sensing, if you feel the tears, the fire, the peace, don't let this moment pass you by. Like this message, if your heart has been stirred and your spirit knows this is for you, share it with someone who's still in their rejection season, someone who needs to know this pain has a purpose. Subscribe so you don't miss the next word, because what God is building in you isn't finished yet. And if this message has truly spoken to you, consider sowing into it. Not out of pressure, but out of partnership. You're not just giving into a moment, you're giving into a movement of voices rising out of rejection, a generation of the overlooked stepping into their divine assignments. Your seed helps make space for the next person who's still in silence, still in hiding, still waiting to be found. Whether it's $5 or a prayer, every act of honor multiplies what God is doing. Because this word won't stop here. It's going further. And maybe that's part of your calling too, not just to be found, but to help others find their way back. Rejection tried to mark you, but God is about to crown you in the very place you were cast aside. And this time no one can take it from you. You've learned how to stand alone. Not because you wanted to, but because you had to. There were seasons where no one clapped, no one stayed, and no one understood, and still, you didn't quit. You adjusted your crown in the dark. You kept walking with tears in your eyes. You kept obeying, even when obedience cost you everything. That wasn't weakness. That was weight. That was what it meant to be chosen. It's not just what you carry, it's how you carry it. You've walked through what many couldn't endure, and yet you made it look effortless. Not because it was, but because grace covered what grit couldn't carry. You learned how to cry in private and lead in public. You learned how to bleed without broadcasting it. You learned how to carry revelation while still recovering from the last round of heartbreak. You became the kind of person who knows how to build while bleeding. That's not normal. That's what happens when heaven places something inside of you that cannot be silenced by suffering. The reason people couldn't understand you is because your walk was never supposed to be explained. It was meant to be revealed. God didn't ask for permission when He chose you. He didn't submit your calling to a panel for approval. He called you, marked you, anointed you, and then He began shaping you in silence. While others sought validation, He taught you how to walk unseen, and in that sacred hiddenness, something unshakable was formed. It's easy to celebrate breakthrough, but only the truly called can praise God in the absence of progress. Only the chosen ones know how to lift their hands when doors are still closed, when nothing is changing, when the wilderness seems endless. That kind of praise doesn't come from hype, it comes from history, from a track record with God built in caves and deserts and long, lonely nights. That's why you don't need the spotlight. You are the evidence. People ask how you keep going, how you still have a heart that's soft, how you didn't let bitterness take over. But what they don't know is that you did have moments where bitterness knocked on your door. You had thoughts that scared you. You had days where you questioned everything God, your calling, your worth, your future. But deep in your spirit, something wouldn't let you give up. That something was Him. He's been with you through every breakdown you never spoke about, through every betrayal that still lingers in your memory, through every moment where your strength gave out and all you had left was the whisper, "God, help me." And somehow, He always did. Sometimes through peace, sometimes through people, sometimes through nothing more than the ability to keep breathing. But He never left, and He never will. The prophet Isaiah spoke these words as recorded in chapter 43, verse 2, "When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze." That wasn't poetry. That was promise, and you're living proof of it. The waters came, but they didn't take you. The fire raged, but it didn't consume you. You survived what you thought would destroy you. And now you carry the fragrance of someone who's been through it and kept their faith. Because what He placed in you wasn't for a season, it was for a generation. There are people assigned to your voice. There are lives waiting on your obedience. There are battles you've already won that someone else doesn't know how to fight yet, and your scars will speak for them before your words ever do. You didn't go through all of this just for survival. You went through it so your life could be a signpost evidence of what God can do with a surrendered vessel. You are a walking prophecy fulfilled, a testimony wrapped in skin, a threat to darkness not because of perfection, but because of resilience. And that's why hell tried so hard to shut you down. It wasn't about what you've done. It was about what you're destined to do. You are a carrier of glory, a breaker of cycles, a vessel of answers. You walk into rooms and shift the atmosphere, not because of what's seen, but because of what's sensed. There's a weight to your presence, not rooted in ego, but in intimacy with the Father. You don't speak to impress, you speak to ignite. You don't pray for performance, you pray because you know heaven listens when your voice rises. Don't ever forget how far you've come. Don't minimize the road you've walked. You carry the residue of both war and worship. And that's what makes your walk undeniable. You're not just anointed, you're appointed. And you've been forged in fire for exactly what's coming next. Some moments don't come with warning. They come with weight. And this right here, right now, is one of those moments. You've felt it stirring in your spirit, not in your emotions, not in your thoughts, but deep in your spirit. Something is shifting, quietly, suddenly, permanently. This isn't hype. This is holy. You've spent years being faithful with little, years choosing obedience when it looked like it wasn't working, years surrendering in silence while others succeeded in spotlight. And through it all, you kept saying yes to God, even when you were tired, even when it cost you everything, even when it didn't make sense. That kind of obedience doesn't go unnoticed. That kind of faith creates divine momentum. And now, it's here. The shift you've been sensing isn't imagination, it's acceleration. God is moving you from foundation to fulfillment, from preparation to manifestation, from hiddenness to harvest. But hear this, the harvest won't come because of striving, it will come because of surrender. Everything you've been walking through has been pressing you, not punishing you. It's been pushing something out of you: oil, wisdom, discernment, clarity, boldness. And that pressing has qualified you in a realm where man's approval means nothing. Because God isn't just releasing you into a season, He's releasing you into a spiritual dimension you've never walked in before. This next move isn't about elevation, it's about alignment. You're not going higher just to be seen, you're going deeper so God can be revealed. And the depth of your next dimension will require a clarity in your identity. That's why God had to deal with the residue, the fears, the questions, the places in you that were still negotiating your worth. But He's settled it now. You are His, chosen, sealed, sent. Not because you're qualified by the world's standards, but because you're available to heaven. You've been prepared in pain, sharpened in silence, fortified in rejection. And now the assignment has shifted. You're not in the same place anymore. Even if your surroundings haven't changed, you have. Your posture has shifted. Your discernment has matured. Your roots have gone deeper, and heaven has noticed. That's why the warfare increased lately. It wasn't because you were losing, it was because you were crossing over. The enemy always attacks at the point of breakthrough, but he made a mistake this time because he forgot how much you've grown. He hit the version of you that no longer breaks the way you used to. And now, It's too late to stop what God has already released over your life. The prophet Amos wrote in chapter 9, verse 13, "The days are coming, declares the Lord, when the reaper will be overtaken by the plowman. New wine will drip from the mountains and flow from all the hills." That's not poetic metaphor. That's prophetic momentum. That is the word over your life right now. You're entering a space where the sowing and the reaping are happening at the same time, where the speed of fulfillment will be so rapid. It will overtake your expectations. Things you planted in tears will sprout in days, not decades. This is what it looks like when heaven's timing meets earth's readiness. But here's the key. Don't minimize the moment. Mark it. Let heaven record your agreement. Not just with your thoughts, but with your spirit. If this word has found you at the very edge of surrender and breakthrough, comment the number 888 below. That number, prophetically, represents new beginnings. But not just fresh starts. It represents divine cycles completed and reset by heaven's hand. A number of covenant renewal, grace, reactivation, and purpose, recommissioning. When you type it, you're not just agreeing with the message, you're stepping into alignment with what's already been written about you in heaven's book. 888 is not random. It's symbolic. It's sacred. So, let it be written. Let it be spoken. Let it be sealed. This is more than a turning point. It's a birthing point. What was growing in secret is now being delivered in glory. What was wrestled for in silence is now being released with power. You are not stepping into just another season. You are stepping into a dimension of destiny that can no longer be delayed. You are not waiting anymore. You are walking into it. Comment 888 if this word found your spirit exactly where it's been waiting. Let the number be your declaration. Let it break the silence. Let it confirm what heaven already knows. You're not who you were yesterday, and you'll never go back. You carry something that can't be taught. It didn't come from a pulpit, a program, or a platform. It came from pain, from pressing, from seasons of silence where you had nothing left to lean on but God. That's where your anointing was born, not in the applause, but in the ashes. And now, wherever you go, the atmosphere shifts. Not because you're loud, not because you're forceful, but because your presence has weight. You don't just walk in a room, you bring something into it. Peace, conviction, fire, authority. The residue of the one who has walked with you through every wilderness and every war. You're not like everyone else, and deep down, you've always known it. From an early age, you felt the tension, the feeling of being different. Even when you tried to blend in, the sense that you couldn't follow the crowd, even if you wanted to. What others could joke about, you couldn't. What others could tolerate, your spirit couldn't. You didn't understand it at the time. But it wasn't awkwardness, it was assignment. You were marked early. And because of that, your life has never been ordinary. Where others were given leniency, you were met with consequence. Where others got by, you were brought low. And while that may have felt like punishment, it was actually preservation. God was never trying to break you down. He was building you differently. He was constructing a vessel that could carry weight in the spirit. This is why your warfare has always been intense. It's not just about your past, it's about your presence. The darkness recognized you before you recognized yourself. The enemy saw the oil before you did. And that's why the attacks started early. That's why the confusion was constant. That's why the rejection felt personal, because it was. But through it all, you've become something dangerous to darkness. You're not just someone who believes, you're someone who knows. You've seen too much to be talked out of your faith. You've survived too much to be silenced. And now, even in your quiet moments, there's a roar inside you, a clarity, a discernment, a prophetic edge that cuts through confusion. That's not pride, that's presence. You carry the weight of encounter, the wisdom of wilderness, the perspective of one who's seen the hand of God in famine, not just in feast. You've prayed prayers that never made it to paper. You've warred in the spirit when no one else saw. You've stood between life and death for yourself, for your family, for others, and you've seen heaven respond. That kind of history builds a different kind of authority. And the world doesn't know what to do with someone like you. They don't have a category for it. You don't fit neatly into their systems. You aren't motivated by status. You don't need titles. You don't chase platforms. You're not impressed by popularity. That's because you've touched something deeper, something real, something holy. The prophet Jeremiah wrote in chapter 20, verse 9, "But his word was in my heart like a burning fire shut up in my bones. I was weary of holding it back, and I could not." That's what you carry. A fire that won't stay silent. A message that refuses to die. A call that presses against your ribs until it finds release. That's why, even when you tried to quit, you couldn't. Even when you walked away from the idea of being used, God kept pulling you back. Because what He placed in you isn't casual. It's consecrated. You've seen what happens when God breathes on a moment. When heaven opens over obedience, when the atmosphere responds to yieldedness. You've seen miracles, some public, most private. And because of that, you can no longer be manipulated by noise. You're not just gifted, you're trusted. That trust wasn't given quickly. It was earned through scars, through sacrifice, through seasons that no one applauded but heaven celebrated. While others built influence, you built intimacy. And that intimacy is now becoming your credibility. You don't speak because you want to be heard. You speak because you carry something that must be released. That's why you're still here. That's why you couldn't quit, even when you tried. That's why no matter how many times you felt like walking away, something deep inside kept saying, "Not yet. There's more." You weren't just called to survive your past. You were born to shift the future. You were born to carry glory, disrupt darkness, and walk in power that doesn't come from performance, but from presence. You are not a mistake. You are a message. And now it's time to be heard. You didn't choose the mantle. The mantle chose you. Before you had language for what you carried, before you had maturity to handle it, before you even understood what being set apart truly meant, God had already placed it on you. That invisible weight you've been carrying all your life, that's not your imagination. That's evidence of divine selection, of a life not meant for convenience, but for consequence, for kingdom consequences. There's a reason you couldn't take the easy way out, a reason shortcuts never worked for you. Others could lie their way through, blend in, compromise, take shortcuts, and they prospered, or so it seemed. But you, the moment you stepped out of alignment, correction came quickly. Discipline came fast. It's not because God was against you. It's because he's jealously protective over what he placed inside you. You are carrying something that hell hopes you never recognize. You are a gate, a breaker, a bridge between heaven and earth. Your very existence is an act of defiance against darkness. And it's not because you shout the loudest or quote the most verses, it's because you obey quietly, when no one else is watching. And that kind of obedience terrifies the enemy. You don't walk with arrogance. You walk with awareness. You know your flesh could never get you here, but His grace did. And that's why you've remained teachable, humble, broken. Yes, but still bowed, still yielded, still aware that none of this makes sense apart from Him. And yet, the weight has been real. You've questioned if the pressure would break you. You've wondered how long you could carry this without collapsing. And God, in His mercy, has never asked you to carry it alone. Even Jesus, in the Garden of Gethsemane, wrestled with the weight of what He was called to do. The Savior of the world sweat drops of blood, not because He was weak, but because the assignment was heavy. And still, He said, "Not my will, but yours be done." End of quote. The chosen are not immune to pain. They are entrusted with it. God trusts you. Let that sink in. The Creator of the universe looked at you and said, "Yes, they can carry this." Not because you're perfect, but because you're willing, because your heart still says yes through tears, through silence, through delays, through crushing, the kind of yes that can't be faked, the kind of yes that echoes in heaven. You didn't survive what you've survived just to say you made it. You survived to show others the way. You are a living roadmap, a signpost, a living altar that says, God still saves, God still heals, God still uses the least likely, and yes, your steps have been ordered, even the ones that didn't make sense, even the detours, even the missteps, even the pain that felt like punishment. Every chapter was necessary to build the oil you now carry. Not manufactured oil, crushed oil. The prophet Isaiah wrote in chapter 61, verse 1, "The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor, to bind up the broken-hearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives and release from darkness for the prisoners." That's not just a mission. That's your mantle. That's why you couldn't die in the valley. That's why the depression didn't swallow you. That's why betrayal couldn't erase you. You were anointed to bind up, to proclaim, to release. You were called to open the gates for others, even while you were bleeding yourself. And God? He saw every tear that hit the pillow. He heard the quiet cries of, "I don't know if I can do this." And still, He whispered back, "You can, because I'm with you." End of. What's ahead of you is weighty, but you're ready. Not because it's easy, but because you've been forged. Every unanswered prayer, every closed door, every night you thought heaven was silent, it was all part of the fire that formed you. And now, you walk differently, speak differently, pray differently, not out of pride, but out of purity. You've been entrusted with something sacred, and this world hasn't seen the fullness of what's on your life yet, but heaven has, and that's why God kept preserving you, even from yourself. You carry a mantle that cannot be passed down casually. It can only be forged. And you, chosen one, have been in the fire long enough. It's time to emerge. There comes a moment in every chosen one's life when you realize you weren't just called to survive, you were called to establish. You were chosen not only to endure rejection, betrayal, and delay, but to rise above it, and then build from it. You're not just a story of redemption. You're a foundation for others to stand on. This is that moment. The shame that tried to silence you is breaking. The delay that tried to discourage you is lifting. The lies that tried to bury you are unraveling. Why? Because your voice is no longer echoing from the past. It's calling forth the future. You've crossed into clarity. Your spirit knows it. The atmosphere around you confirms it. Heaven has released you into something new. And it's bigger than you expected. You thought you were healing just for peace. But God was preparing you for position. You thought you were walking alone just to survive the pain. But God was anchoring your roots for authority. You thought the fire would burn you. But instead it marked you. Now, when you speak, chains break. When you pray, atmospheres shift. When you walk, territories tremble. Not because you sought power, but because you surrendered deeply. That kind of spiritual weight cannot be faked. It cannot be marketed. It is formed only in the crushing, and you know that crushing well. The psalmist wrote in the book of Psalms, chapter 20, verse 6, "The Lord gives victory to his anointed. He answers from heaven with his mighty power." That's the season you've entered. Not of striving, but of supernatural victory. Not of noise, but of undeniable evidence. You're not trying to prove yourself anymore. You're not trying to explain what's on you to people who don't have the language for your call. You're walking in quiet, consistent obedience, and God is doing the announcing for you. The ones who overlooked you will have no choice but to witness what heaven does through you. The ones who misjudged you will see that what they called arrogance was anointing. The ones who left you in your wilderness season will watch as God brings you into a promised place you didn't even ask for, because it's not about revenge. It's about revelation. You are a revelation in motion. You are what it looks like when someone refuses to quit. You are what it looks like when obedience becomes the strategy. You are what it looks like when surrender turns into strength. And now, as this message reaches your ears, you know something in your spirit has shifted again. If you can feel this word confirming everything God's been whispering in your secret place, if you sense the oil on this moment, don't scroll past it. Take a moment right now to like this message, not for metrics, but as a mark of agreement in the spirit. Share it with someone else who's still walking through their valley, who hasn't yet seen the fruit of their obedience. Subscribe to stay connected to this prophetic flow, because if this spoke to your spirit, more is coming that will continue building your faith. And if this word has poured into you, if you feel heaven speaking through it directly into your season, then consider sowing into it, not out of pressure, but as an act of honor, as a prophetic sign that you don't just receive this word, you invest in it. Your seed becomes soil for others. Your generosity becomes a gateway for breakthrough in places you may never step foot. But your obedience will. You can give boldly. You can give quietly. But know this, you are giving into transformation, because this isn't just content. This is commissioning. This is kingdom. This is divine alignment. And every time you comment, every time you share, every time you give, you're not just blessing a message. You're becoming part of the movement. The movement of the rejected rising, the silent now speaking, the overlooked being over-anointed. So let your action echo your agreement. Comment below with whatever is stirring in your spirit. A word, a phrase, even a prayer. Let your presence be known not for attention, but for activation. Because when chosen ones find each other, something happens in the atmosphere. The fire spreads, the chains break, the silence ends. You're not just watching this, you're part of it. And soon, the world will see what God saw first. A vessel molded in fire, a voice born in silence, a warrior wrapped in surrender, a chosen one crowned in oil. Now, walk forward, not in fear, not in delay, but in boldness, because this isn't just another post. This is your confirmation. You were not called to be normal. You were never meant to blend in, to be swallowed by the crowd, to play small so others wouldn't feel uncomfortable around your fire. And even though you've tried to quiet your roar, soften your edge, dim your light, it never lasted long. Did it? Because what's in you refuses to shrink. The call on your life isn't a suggestion, it's a command. A divine decree that still echoes through your bones, even when you try to ignore it. You've been chosen to carry the kind of authority that doesn't need explanation. It announces itself in silence. It shifts rooms before you even speak. And no matter how much the world tries to define you, your identity will always come from the one who designed you. You weren't built for approval. You were built for impact. And sometimes, that impact comes with isolation. God didn't allow certain people to stay, not because you weren't lovable, but because they weren't capable of walking at your pace. Some connections expired because your growth demanded space. Some circles cracked because your depth exposed their surface. And it hurt. You loved deeply. You stayed longer than you should have. You forgave what others wouldn't. But the truth is, some people couldn't handle the version of you that God was birthing. They were attached to the version of you that needed them. But that version no longer exists. What remains now is a person who has walked through the fire and didn't come out smelling like smoke. A person who knows how to lose without becoming bitter. A person who knows how to stay silent without being silenced. A person who knows how to carry vision, even when the room is empty and the applause is gone. That's not coldness. That's refinement. You've been refined by delay, by heartbreak, by divine silence. Not punished, refined. And because of that, you now walk with clarity. You don't need 10 confirmations to move. You don't need validation to obey. You don't wait for others to believe in you. You believe God. And that's enough. This level of obedience isn't cheap. It costs you comfort. It costs you understanding. But it unlocks something most people will never touch. The flow of divine instruction. You don't just carry a message. You carry orders. And heaven has assigned you to territories both spiritual and physical that your voice is meant to impact. Not through performance, not through perfection, but through prophetic presence. There are doors that will open to you, not because of your resume, but because of your resilience. Because God is now rewarding what you built in secret, not just with platforms, but with power. Not just with visibility, but with authority, because that's what this journey has been about all along, not being seen by man, but being trusted by heaven. And now you're beginning to realize the real crown isn't recognition, it's responsibility. The more you're entrusted with, the more your life becomes a vessel for others. Your voice is a lifeline. Your prayers are weapons. Your worship shifts bloodlines. You don't just show up, you intervene. You are a spiritual disruptor, a climate changer, a forerunner, the kind of person who gets attacked first because you step in first. And though that warfare has been real, so has the grace. Grace to stand, grace to see, grace to endure what others collapsed under, grace to speak what others were too afraid to say, grace to wait on God when everything in you screamed to make it happen yourself. You've waited well, and that wait wasn't passive, it was prophetic. Every moment you chose prayer over panic, surrender over strategy, silence over striving. You weren't delaying your destiny, you were building it. And now the weight you carry will match the weight you've endured. People will call it sudden. They'll say it came out of nowhere. They'll wonder how you were discovered. But the truth is, you were never lost. You were hidden, on purpose, by design, for a time such as this. The prophet Habakkuk recorded it in chapter 2, verse 3. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, though it linger. Wait for it. It will certainly come, and will not delay. You were never behind. You were on heaven's schedule, and now the time has come. Not to start over, but to step forward. Not to recover what was lost, but to receive what's been prepared. The preparation was real. The pain was real. But so is the promise. So walk like it's time, because it is. You've come too far to turn back now. Too much has been fought for. Too much has been endured. Too much has been revealed. The old you, the one who tolerated less, questioned more, and lived in fear of man's opinion, has already been buried in the ashes of your former season. What stands now is the result of divine construction, brick by brick, tear by tear, decision by decision. And even if you don't always feel strong, heaven knows the weight you carry. You've walked through loss that should have shattered you, nights so dark you forgot what light felt like, moments so silent it seemed even your prayers fell flat against the ceiling. But somehow your feet kept moving. Somehow your hands kept reaching. Somehow your faith kept flickering. And now what once looked like weakness has become your greatest weapon, resilience. There's something dangerous about someone who refuses to let go of God even when they don't understand Him. That's where you've lived. In that tension, in that in-between place where your past won't let you return and your future hasn't fully arrived. It's been hard, the kind of hard that most people wouldn't recognize on your face. But that's because you've learned how to smile with a sword in your hand. You've learned how to worship with wounds still bleeding. You've learned how to be faithful even when you felt forgotten. And heaven has taken note. Nothing you've walked through was wasted. Nothing you've cried about was ignored. Nothing you've surrendered was overlooked. There is justice in the spirit realm, and the scales are tipping in your favor. Not because you demanded it, but because you stayed positioned. Because you never stopped showing up. Because you kept choosing integrity when compromise would have been easier. Because you were willing to be faithful in the shadows. And now, God is bringing you into fulfillment, not because of your strength, but because of your yes. This kind of obedience costs more than most will ever know. It costs comfort, reputation, control, sometimes even relationships. But you paid it, not because you're reckless, but because you're rooted. And that kind of person, one who obeys even when it hurts, is the kind of person heaven can trust with influence. You didn't chase it. You didn't manipulate for it. You didn't beg for platforms. And that's why the mantle sits rightly on you now. You weren't made to perform, you were made to carry weight. Not the weight of performance, but the weight of presence. There's a difference. You shift things not because of your title, but because of your truth. You disrupt things not with volume, but with spirit. You don't come in with status, you come in with substance. And the ones who carry substance are the ones who survive the shaking. And yes, you've been shaken. Every part of your foundation has been tested. Your motives, your maturity, your identity, your theology, your heart. But what's left standing now is unshakable. Not because of you, but because of what was formed in you. That's why you're still here. That's why doors are opening without you having to knock. That's why rooms are making space for your voice without you having to force it. The crushing built capacity, the silence built trust, the pain built oil. The Apostle Paul wrote in his second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 4, verse 7, "But we have this treasure in jars of clay, to show that this all-surpassing power is from God and not from us." You are that jar, cracked, weathered, tried, tested, and still filled with treasure. The treasure isn't your gift. It's your yielding. It's your willingness to stay on the altar long enough for fire to refine what flesh wanted to preserve. And now, what's coming out of you is not ambition, it's anointing. Not performance, but power. And it will only increase. Because this isn't your conclusion, it's your confirmation. Everything you've walked through has led here. Not to a finish line, but to a beginning. The beginning of what your pain was birthing. The beginning of what your obedience was unlocking. The beginning of what your waiting was preparing. You are the evidence of endurance. The sound of surrender. The voice of one who chose the narrow road and found glory on the other side. This is the part where you stop apologizing for your strength. This is the part where you stop shrinking to fit rooms you were meant to transform. This is the part where you step fully into who God always knew you were. And nothing can stop what heaven has authored. Not fear, not failure, not even you. If this journey has pierced your spirit, if you felt the weight of every word and recognized your own story woven in the silence, the crushing, the obedience, then this was never just a script. It was a divine alignment, a supernatural confirmation, a reminder that you were never overlooked, only hidden. You are not who you used to be. And where you're going, eyes haven't seen it. Ears haven't heard it, because God wrote your name into a move of glory, and no force of hell can erase it. If these words have spoken to your soul, don't let them fade into the scroll. Let them anchor deeper. Take a moment now to like this message, not for vanity, but as a sign that your spirit agrees. Share it with someone who is still in their cave, not knowing that the crown awaits. Comment below with your declaration, your prayer, your yes. Let your voice echo what heaven already knows about you. And if you feel led, if something in your spirit says, "This is soil," then sow into this word. Your giving isn't just support, it's a prophetic act. It's saying, I don't just receive this, I honor it. I invest in what shaped me. End of 1. You're not giving to a message, you're giving to a movement, a remnant, a rising. You're planting seed into oil, into fire, into future. Subscribe to stay connected, because this is not the end. This is the beginning of a deeper journey. And I promise you, what's coming next will only go higher, deeper, and stronger. You're not watching by accident. You're here on assignment, and your spirit knows it.